Welcome to Moviefone's Unscripted. I'm director David Sington, and I'm here with astronaut Dave Scott to talk about our movie In the Shadow of the Moon. And Dave and I are going to ask each other questions which you've sent in, and possibly, I'm afraid, we're going to be forced to make up some questions of our own. So the first question, and it's, how did you first get involved in this project?
Well, this, I think, got started about 4 years ago when I was working on the set of Space Odyssey, a BBC documentary, with Duncan Kopp and Chris Riley. And they were the producer and co-producer. And during our discussions on the set, we thought, gee, it's great to look into the future and see what might happen in the future, but how about the past? And maybe we should bring everybody together to tell the story of the past, but to tell it from the ideas or the voices of the guys who actually flew. So Chris and Duncan took it from there and invited me to dinner one night to watch Touching the Void, the documentary, which I thought was spectacular. And they said, what do you think about doing a similar film for Apollo? And I thought it was great. And then they brought you into the picture, and now we have a picture.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
Have you always been fascinated with space?
I'm of that generation that was a kid when you guys were walking on the moon. And, you know, my bedroom at home was full of the big maps of the moon and the little Airfix models of the spacecraft, just like millions and millions of other children. And I remember being allowed to stay up late to watch Neil Armstrong take those first steps on the moon. That was a big deal. You know, we were in England, so it was quite late at night. And that's, you know, a vivid memory of my life. Do you think if the glory days of space exploration are actually behind us?
No, not at all. I think we've only begun. And I like to put it in historical perspective that Columbus has just returned and the moon is not, or the Earth is not flat after all. But Cabot and Magellan haven't made their voyages and Captain Cook hadn't even been born. So I think we're going to see a great period of exploration in the future, but it won't be next year or 10 years. It'll be a long time out, but humans need to explore, they will explore, and the glory days are in front of us. What surprised you the most in making the documentary?
I think that the thing that really surprised and delighted me, actually, in doing the interviews, was just how funny you guys are. You're all brilliant raconteurs. You tell fantastic stories. And in doing the interviews, you know, it was a setup with you guys against a background, and there I was sort of stuck underneath the camera, so that when you looked at me, it appeared that you're looking straight down the camera lens. And of course, I don't appear in this film at all, so I had to develop a kind of silent laugh, because I was laughing a lot of the time, but I didn't want my laughter to get on the soundtrack. And that was really delightful. I think it gives the film a kind of unexpected humor. What is the greatest misconception we have about astronauts?
People think we're all the same, and we're all different. We came from the same backgrounds and had the same experience, but everybody's different. And I think that sort of shows in post-flight, where people went, all of us went to different places and did different things and had new careers. So I think the misconception is that we're all cut out of the same mold and did exactly the same thing. But we didn't, and we weren't. And we're all good friends. Well, it's my turn for an unscripted to you. How many hours of interview did you collect?
About 60 hours.
60 hours.
Yeah. So we were fortunate, I think, that some of the astronauts were able to give us more than one day to do the interviews. So we were able to do very, very full interviews, and we went right back into people's childhoods and took them through their training and experiences in Apollo and afterwards as well. So it was a very large body of interview material, and then we had about a similar amount of archive material which we got from digging down into the NASA archives. And some of the material has been available for a long time. That material we kind of remastered, went back to the originals to make it look better. But there's an awful lot of material in the NASA archives that's not really been seen before, some of it probably never seen before. A lot of material shot on the ground and in mission control during the missions. And that gave us about a similar amount of material to start with. So the film is cut down from about maybe 120 or 130 hours of material down to about 90 minutes. Looking back at the whole experience of making this film, being involved, what are you most proud of?
Well, I think being involved in a film such as this, which actually records what we think about how we went to the moon and what we did on the moon. It's just a real privilege to be able to work with you and with my colleagues, because I've never been in a film or an interview with my buddies. And it's nice to be part of a team again, where we can sort of collectively tell our story, but in an individual character. What do you hope this documentary teaches us about the Apollo missions that we may not have known before?
For me, the message of the film, the important message of the film, is what people can do when they really put their minds to it. If you think about that period, the film starts early on with Kennedy making his speech to Congress in 1961, and then in 1969, not much more than 8 years later, Neil Armstrong was walking on the moon, and then it was followed by all these other missions, and 12 men walked on the moon in that period of time. You know, these days it takes about 8 years to get planning permission to put up a bus stop. You know, we've seemed to have lost something of the can-do spirit of Apollo that enabled extraordinary things to be done. And I think in a world which is facing a lot of problems, a lot of doubts and uncertainty, it's good to be reminded of what human beings can achieve. And I think good for America to remind itself of what America is capable of doing. This was an American project. It was the Stars and Stripes on the moon. And I think it's a tremendous tribute to this country, and something of which Americans need to remember and need to be proud of. Thank you, Dave, and thanks to Moviefone, and thanks to everybody for watching. And I hope that you'll take the opportunity when you get it to go and see our movie In the Shadow of the Moon.